The Amazing Spider-Man issue 39 sees J.Jonah Jameson interviewing Spider-Man on his podcast. As Jonah reads his sponsored ads, Peter wonders how on earth he got himself into this mess. Peter knows it began with a headline that outed his recent secret mission with his S.H.I.E.L.D. agent sister. He tracked the site that published the headline, finding TNM, which when getting there he is met by Jonah, who says that this is his new multimedia empire and they just posted their first big expose, and because of it, things like congressional meetings, lawsuits, and even American Crime Story seasons are being considered. Jonah says that this was all possible because together they broke open the S.H.I.E.L.D. cover-up. Peter tries to explain to Jonah that this was meant to be a classified mission, but Jonah says that he helped Spider-Man with his public image with the story. Peter says that he can't just publish things he tells him in confidence since he could get him into trouble with other heroes, but Jonah doesn't care since Spider-Man is being hailed a hero now. Peter can't believe that Jonah is still the same megalomaniac who will do anything to sell a few papers or in this case clicks. He yells at Jonah, telling him to stay out of his business as Nora Winters arrives. Peter knew she had to be involved in this as Nora tells him this company is bringing the Jameson brand into the future and knows Jonah is taking this all rather well, thinking that he would be an actual nightmare to deal with, but really the only demand he has had is that he needs to show the world that Spider-Man is a hero. Nora doesn't know what brought this change on, but Jonah is being very sincere about it, so maybe Spider-Man should stop giving him the stick and give him a little bit more carrot. Peter approaches Jonah, asking him if he can be on his podcast. Peter knows that he did owe Jonah an interview for everything, since revealing his identity to him caused a few bumps in the road. In the present, Peter is delighted to be part of the podcast, impressed with what Jonah has built there. Nora, however, finds this whole interview to be very unlike Jonah since he's too happy, but he tells the others in the control room to be patient. Jonah never thought that Spider-Man would be friends with him after everything that's happened, but Peter is just glad that he saw the light since it could not have been easy to admit everything that he built was from a sham, but it does take a big man to admit that he was spectacularly wrong. Peter continues to dig into Jonah, saying that he admires it all, finding it funny that in all the ink Jonah wasted on bogus headlines only to learn the truth, but Jonah says that they weren't all bogus. Meanwhile at Chance's casino, Foreigner is met by Chance, telling the villain that he cheated in their last game. Chance doesn't see it that way but admires Foreigner's enthusiasm, wondering if he wants another round of Double or Nothing. He says that he could bet on things like Iron Man versus Iron Man, so Foreigner relents, challenging Chance to steal a web shooter off Spider-Man himself, and if he wins, Chance has to cover everyone's debts for that night's wages. Chance tries to back out, but Foreigner accepts the deal as the crowd cheers him on. Spider-Man meanwhile doesn't think any of Jonah's headlines were true, since Jonah had headlines calling the hero worse than the Red Skull. Jonah tells his listeners it's not easy for a journalistic titan like himself to admit he's wrong, telling Spider-Man he is a hero and he will do everything in his power to let the world know that, but he knows back in the day Peter never did anything to quell those headlines. Peter does try to defend himself, saying that he was just a kid, but knows it was Jonah who turned the city on him and made him his sworn enemy. Jonah wants Peter to remember how he responded to those editorials, since he didn't offer any evidence to refute them. Instead, Spider-Man just antagonized him. Peter knows what he means but pretends to not remember as Foreigner waits for Chance to don his jetpack, telling him that his people have pinpointed Spider-Man's location, sending the location to the villain so he can steal the web shooter. Chance begrudgingly thanks Foreigner, telling him that he will never forget this as he rockets off. Nora meanwhile celebrates them catching Spider-Man off guard, knowing every minute both he and Jonah argue the podcast gets better and better. Jonah and Spider-Man continue to argue about the hero taking responsibility for his part in all of this. Jonah knows that they're best not to question the Amazing Spider-Man on the lack of responsibility since they all know he carries such a heavy burden. Talk turns to the recent classified mission and how Jonah wanted to clear his name in all of that. Jonah reveals the reason that he was so suspicious of Spider-Man to begin with was since all the other heroes were part of teams or families or schools, but Spider-Man always just kept finding himself on his own, and if he did team up, he always ended up fighting the hero first. Peter tries to defend him fighting the heroes as a tradition, and he did join the Avengers, who Jonah knows fired him after he was revealed to be Dr. Octopus, something everyone would have figured out sooner had he communicated better with everyone. But he knows Spider-Man is just too arrogant to listen to anyone else. Peter finds that rich coming from Jonah, and maybe he would have had support had Jonah not made him a pariah the week he put on his costume. Jonah says that now no one is writing anything everything bad about him, yet people like Kingpin were able to convince other heroes and the people that Spider-Man is a bad guy without even a word from Jonah, who he wants to know what is his big excuse for that. As Chance speeds towards T&M, Spider-Man calls Jonah a lousy publisher, but Jonah says that if Spider-Man wants the public to like him, he needs to stop with the jokes, since heroes like Captain America don't need jokes to do their job professionally. Suddenly Peter's spider sense triggers and he tries to warn Jonah about what is going to happen. Nora thinks that they are going to fight as Spider-Man dives across the table, protecting Jonah as the building explodes, with Chance arriving and looking for Spider-Man's web shooters. The Amazing Spider-Man issue 39 was a really great Peter Jameson centric issue that really tore into their turbulent relationship. I enjoyed the issue was action packed, but not in the way many would think, since we had some rather tense conversations with Peter and Jameson, and I love Jameson throwing it all back at Peter as well, and how in the past the hero never actually accepted responsibility for his actions against Jameson and really annoyed him just because it was fun, not thinking of the ramifications of that. It was great to see Peter caught off guard like he was. I really enjoyed the Jameson-Peter relationship under Nick Spencer, and he continues to provide really awesome looks into the characters' lives. I'm going to give this issue a 9.5 out of 10.